Welcome to our December edition of Gold and Black Live. And Brian Newbert will join us for segment one. We will have also um, Mark Carney and David Neff from the Boilermaker Alliance will join us. We're going to introduce David Neff, now the new CEO and president of the Boilermaker Alliance. And then, of course, segment three, Elliot Bloom, all kind of focusing on what's going to be a really big, stating the obvious, big game for the Purdue men's basketball team tomorrow as Purdue takes on Arizona. First time ever that a number three ranked Purdue team is taking on a number one ranked team, but a great opportunity. Will be an unbelievable crowd, I would think, in Indianapolis. Mark, the opportunity for Purdue to play in this game, Brian, you talked to Matt Painter on Thursday. Yes, it's another game, but it's just another ability to showcase what has been in a gauntlet of an unbelievable non-conference schedule for Purdue.
Yeah, I think it's not. I don't think it's overstatement to say this is the strongest non-conference schedule in Purdue history, and I'm only saying that based on the fact I can't imagine there having been one stronger.
Nope.
And Purdue's basically one win away from going unbeaten in the non-conference for the third straight year. That's not what Purdue aspires to this season by any means, by any stretch of the imagination. But, to be one win away from running the table against these schedules they've put together the last 3 years is really something. Now, obviously, this last one is going to be the big one because this is, the best team Purdue's played to date. And that says something given what they played in Honolulu and whatnot. But, I think it's a good opportunity, obviously, for Purdue to kind of. I don't think being number one matters all that much, and to be honest with you, the way things tend to go when Purdue is number one, do you even want it?
Yeah,
I'd run away from it as fast as I can if I were Purdue, but that's just me. I think that all these experiences in the non-conference season should bolster Purdue for when it matters most later in the year. Now, obviously, Purdue's played tough schedules the last 2 years, and that's not necessarily worked that way. But should this year, I think Arizona's level of athleticism and skill, coupled with the legitimate size they have to go against Zach Edey, I think is as close to a complete team as Purdue's going to see all year long. And there's not going to be anything you can run into in March that you haven't already, seen and then some between what you're going to see in Arizona, what you saw in the 3 games in Honolulu. And, you still had Arkansas on there, albeit just an exhibition. You still had Alabama on there. And
Xavier.
Yeah, I don't know how good they are, but I think that Purdue should be ready for anything here in a couple months, provided they stay healthy, provided they're consistent. There's not a lot of red flags with Purdue right now. The turnover thing is going to be an issue, but other than that, they're not the best defensive team in the country, but I don't think anybody realistically expected them to be, nor do they necessarily need to be as good as they are on offense. But I think that, they should be this should turn out to be a situation here in a couple of months where you look back on this and you say that everything Purdue dealt with here in November and December really, really helped them come, the end of February into March.
Yeah. Some of the national narrative, I think, and again, for what it's worth, physicality of the guards, and what will be an interesting thing, Caleb Love, obviously, with the North Carolina transfer via other places as well, will be an interesting matchup situation. Obviously, with also Arizona's got size in the backcourt. Purdue has skill in the backcourt. Certainly, Braden Smith certainly doesn't need to take a backseat to anybody. Fletcher Loyer, his ability to defend in this situation it's always been being tested, no matter who you're playing against. But talk about that. I mean, what are some of the things, that when you look at a game like this in a quasi home game, but not a complete home game, certainly. But you're playing a team in Arizona that's got a lot of skill, a lot of weapons in a lot of different places.
Yeah, but so did Marquette, did Gonzaga, so did Tennessee, so did Alabama. They all had big guards too.
Yeah.
And um, I think those teams, what they had in the backcourt, stacked up pretty favorably with what Purdue's going to see against Arizona. Now, what those teams didn't necessarily have was the size up front and the more complete package, the defensive MO. Even though I think Tennessee's a really good defensive team.
Yeah.
Um, I think this is just top to bottom going to be the best team Purdue's played. I haven't had a chance to see Arizona on TV at all this season, but I know what they're all about, and they're very good, obviously, and very talented. And Purdue's going to have its hands full. But I don't think Braden Smith's going to take a backseat to anybody. I think Braden Smith's one of the best guards in the country. And it's not like, having a 5'10" point guard and having a 170-pound shooting guard is anything new for Purdue. I mean, think of how many games they've won the last couple of years with that. I mean, their guards are no smaller, no slighter than they were in Honolulu.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of matchups that are going to be challenging, but Purdue's overcome those challenges at like a 90% success rate here the last 18 months or so. So I don't think that's as big an issue as people want to make it out to be. The other thing is Arizona doesn't have Zach Edey. And Arizona doesn't have a lot of what Purdue has. I think people tend to look at what Purdue doesn't have versus teams like this instead of looking at what the other team doesn't have that Purdue does. And there's one Zach Edey in college basketball, and he wears a Purdue jersey. So it's a pretty big advantage.
Yeah.
And I think you have one of the best point guards in college basketball. And it doesn't matter that he's 5'10". He was 5'10" in Honolulu too when he played against Tyler Kolek, and was 5'10" this past weekend when he played against what Alabama had. And I don't think it matters. In fact, I if I were Purdue, I'd be telling him before the game, "Hey, you're only 5'10". Hey, you're only 5'10". Just piss him off.
Yeah.
And you'd probably get the best version of him.
Yeah. A mad Braden Smith seems to be a good Braden Smith. Video aside, he's about as competitive as it gets. Now, Matt Painter talked on Thursday about the rotation and how that works, and you've documented that well and things that you've written and talked about this year. It is an interesting situation because you are 10 deep. That hasn't changed. There's going to be guys. He talked about how whether it's Miles Colvin or Ethan Morton, Mason Gillis, there's always going to be somebody that's going to get the short end of the stick based on how games go. Just talk about that and how maybe Matt Painter's looked at to evolve into being more comfortable with this type of rotation, and maybe it isn't going to change that much because I think you're going to have you've got 10 guys you definitely can play in this situation.
Yeah, no, I don't think. I think the experimentation part of this is over. I think that what you're seeing right now is what you're going to get. And I think there's going to be games where Trey Kaufman-Renn plays more at the 4. There's going to be games where Mason Gillis and Caleb Furst play more. There's going to be games where things are working for Camden Heide. He's going to play more. Miles Colvin's going to keep getting his minutes, and he's going to have the chance to earn more and more. Where those minutes come from, that's not necessarily easy to say.
No.
There's going to be games where they need Ethan Morton out there for defense. There's going to be games where, it's going to be a Lance Jones game where he plays more. There's going to be games where maybe there's not a great matchup for somebody in the backcourt. Somebody gets in foul trouble. Somebody's going to play more than they ordinarily do or less than they ordinarily do. And so far, so good on that front. I mean, it sounds implausible because everybody thinks that you can't play this many guys enough. But you can play guys over the course of 30 games enough. It doesn't necessarily have to be everybody gets this amount of minutes every single game. As long as winning's enough for a lot of these guys, you should be good. And there are no red flags in that regard. you have three guys on this team who've been starters at Purdue and won a hell of a lot of games for Purdue in Mason Gillis, Ethan Morton, and Caleb Furst. And, I don't see any real causes for concern there as those guys come off the bench. I think winning is important to all of those guys. I think they get it. I think they understand it. As Painter says all the time, they don't have to like it, but I think they get it. So it's just going to be a game-to-game deal, and that can work. That is working. And I don't anticipate that changing. Everybody wants to, for whatever reason, everybody wants to tear down the starting lineup after every game. It's just not going to happen.
Matters.
It's not reality. It also doesn't matter all that much.
No, it just doesn't.
Trey Kaufman-Renn was -20 in the plus minus versus Alabama by virtue of the fact that he was out there for those first 5 minutes when Alabama was just making all these threes. Now, a couple of those threes, maybe a quicker footed guy might have been able to contest those shots better than Trey Kaufman-Renn was able to, but they weren't shooting that well because Trey Kaufman-Renn was on the floor. They were shooting that well because they were red hot.
Yeah.
And, when I went back and watched the game, I looked at the threes they took with Furst and Mason Gillis on the floor versus the threes they took with Trey Kaufman-Renn on the floor at the start. Not a whole lot of difference, except for the fact that the ones with Kaufman-Renn at the start of the game went in and the others didn't. So, sometimes there's not going to be a whole lot of separation there, even though it might look like somebody's way better than somebody else. But I think that it's just going to be one of those deals where everybody you can turn to is a good player. Everybody's deserving of being out there. And some games it's just going to be one guy, and the next game it's going to be the other guy. And, over the course of the season, it all evens out probably.
Critical thinking is a good thing when you look at where this, it's easy to, I think fans and observers want to make easy calls on the way, this is the way it is. This is exactly what we're seeing here. Yeah, -20 of Trey Kaufman-Renn against Alabama. And Matt Painter talked about that, and you've written about it too, that there is a lot more to it than meets the eye from that standpoint of what guys are going to contribute and win. I think one of the biggest things is going to be for Matt Painter is just pushing the right buttons at the right time and getting the guys in there that are doing the job. And you got 10 good options. That seems to me to be pretty clear.
Well, the one thing that really makes this work is winning.
Yes.
It's one thing to, not be playing as many minutes as you want to be when you're winning. It's another thing to not be playing as many minutes as you want to be when you're not winning. And you think you can make a difference, and you think that the difference between your team winning and your team losing is the fact that you're not playing as much as you should. As long as Purdue keeps winning, I don't anticipate any problems. And, if Purdue goes on a losing streak at some point, they just don't play well for a while. I still don't know if this whole thing goes sideways on him, but it's something you always have to be conscious of, and it's something he's always on top of. There's a reason in the springs and summers he doesn't always go all out to add a guy if he's got open scholarship. It's because he doesn't want that guy at the end of the bench who he cannot play being unhappy and complaining and, kind of bringing people down with him. And that's part of team building. And, people, when they look at rosters like a fantasy team and they think you don't have enough of this, you don't have enough of that. If they just had one more scorer sitting at the end of the bench, that would change everything. It doesn't really work that way. And, the one thing he's always been very careful about managing is making sure he doesn't have any malcontents at the end of the bench, because he's been through that. He's known what a bad attitude or two on your team can do, because he lived through 2012, 2013,
right,
etc. And I think he learned a lot from that, and I think that's just the way he's going to operate. But he's going to be very careful he's going to be very proactive with these guys, I'm sure, about being honest with them and kind of keeping in their ears about, you know, what they need to be doing and things like that. And also making clear to them that, yeah, you do deserve more minutes, but so does everybody else. So you're not necessarily in a one of one position here. So I mean that's part of the challenge of having a good deep team too, is just managing it. And you know, so far so good.
Yeah, I think the truth is your greatest defense and asset. And Matt Painter's always had that reputation of being honest with his guys. And you're right, winning cures a lot of things if you're in that situation. And I think without, it seems to me that the chemistry in this team and this program has been extremely strong, and that's an asset as well. All right, so how do you see this thing go? You know, and obviously you'll have a prediction on the site tomorrow as you have the preview up, but how you look? I mean, is this a one possession game and it's going to go down to the wire? How do you know? I know that's what the odds makers probably are going to say, but what do you think?
Yeah, it's a toss up. I just think, you know, Purdue's going to have a de facto home court advantage.
Yes.
I think Purdue's really good, and I think Braden Smith and Zach Edey are both playing at a level that, um, you know, are going to make them really hard to beat. And I think that, you know, athletically, Purdue stacks up in games like this now, whereas before you might have really worried about, you know, some of these dudes Arizona has versus the guy who's going to be lining up next to him. But now you got your Lance Jones, you got your Miles Colvins, your Camden Heidi's, guys who look the same in uniform as the guys who play for these blue blood type programs. And I just think Purdue's up to it. I think they're up to it more than ever. They just have to not turn the ball over. They have to not crater from three. I wouldn't anticipate any of that stuff happening. But that's what those things are still very real.
Yeah.
In terms of concerns. I think Zach Edey, you know, it might be a little bit liberating, you know, for him to play against credible size.
Yeah.
Because I think he's better against traditional size than he is having to worry about stomping somebody who's way smaller than him or way skinnier than him, and you know, things like that. And even though Purdue's played a ton of high majors now, he hasn't played against a really good big guy yet, a true big guy, somebody who he can actually have leverage over, you know, things like that. And you know, that might bring out the best in, and the best of him is pretty damn good. And I think, you know, you still have the best player in the country. And I think you have a second All-America level player now in Braden Smith, the way he's playing. As long as, you know, Smith plays under control, doesn't turn the ball over too much. And if he can make jumpers in this game, the way Arizona defends, I think his jump shot can be a real difference maker in this game. So there's always some variance when you're dealing with jump shooting, but I think that he's proven himself that he's going to make shots. And I think that, you know, Purdue's got enough going for it where it can be just a little bit better than Arizona here. I would worry about the way they defend and the physicality and the athleticism and the versatility they have on the perimeter and things like that. But I think Purdue's seen teams that are similar with all the SEC people they've played so far. And I just think Purdue's up to it. Now Arizona will get another crack at them in Vegas next year. So,
and then who knows what will happen come March/April as well. This is certainly a precursor, prelude maybe to what an Elite Eight national semifinal could look like if you're Purdue and or Arizona. All right,
well, chances are, you know, by the end of the week, or by the time Big Ten play resumes, chances are Purdue will have played at least one team that's going to be in the Final Four by the end of the year.
Yeah, I think it's
with the way the schedule's played out. I think Marquette's that good. I think Tennessee's that good. I think Arizona's that good, and you know, we'll see what Gonzaga ends up looking like. But I think Purdue's played a ridiculous schedule.
going to be to Purdue's advantage, one would think, heading on. All right, I want to thank Triple X on the hill, but on the level of Purdue tradition since 1929. Of course, State Farm agent Trent Johnson. We will take a 2-minute break and be back with Mark Carney and David Neff from the Boilermaker Alliance. I'm going to get a chance to introduce the new CEO and president of the Boilermaker Alliance as well. A lot of issues that go with that. Then Elliot Bloom will join us in segment 3 and talk a little bit, I would guess, about scheduling and also what goes into having a team that getting a team organized and ready to go in a number of different ways that Elliot does for Purdue. So we'll take a 2-minute break. We'll be back for our next segment on Gold and Black Live.